Fox News Alert, just a new video into the channel. Here you can see the President and First Lady of the United States inside the Sistine Chapel. Of course, that's part of the Apostolic Palace where the Pope lives. Up on the ceiling, the famous Michelangelo, where you see the hands of God.
The Last Judgment.
Exactly. God and Adam, which you've seen a million times.
It's absolutely beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go to Rome, you have to go visit the Vatican. The Vatican is the smallest country in the world, believe it or not. It's home to the Pope and headquarters to the Roman Catholic Church.
It used to be home to Father Jonathan, and I'm sure there's a plaque somewhere for you, Father Jonathan.
And why are we talking about it? You need to tell us the story.
Do you ever get tired of going to places like that when you were living there?
I don't, and it feels like home after you've been there for a long time, just being in Rome. And but also it feels like home because all of those beautiful paintings are really stories of the Bible. And it feels like, gosh, this is what life is all about. This is the story of our existence, our purpose, and where we're going to end up, hopefully heaven.
I think I remember when we took the tour, they said that Michelangelo painted them on scaffolding on his back.
That's right. That's right.
Fascinating.
The Sistine Chapel is usually filled with people, hundreds of people going through rather quickly, so it's kind of noisy. This is a very special opportunity to be there alone, and it's also where they elect the new Pope. That's where all of the cardinals go into and make big decisions.
I watched you this morning, and I know we were kind of wondering in anticipation what it's going to be like. From what we know now, without a readout, how do you think the president's doing? How do you think it went?
I think it was fascinating. Donald Trump was not known before he became president to be a very religious person. That's not making a judgment of him, but that wasn't how he was known. And here he's going to visit the great leaders of Islam, of Judaism, and of Christianity, and he is seeing, I think, he's getting a very sobering experience of how important religion is, also on the level of politics and peace and conflict. And I think it's probably a huge, a very impactful thing in his own life.
Sure. I mean, Donald Trump's a capitalist, and the Pope has been described many different ways. One thing, he is the Pope of the, he is the man of the people. And
Never heard him described as a capitalist.
When it comes to, for instance, the wall, which Donald Trump talked a lot about during the campaign, the Pope took issue with that.
Yes, and there was probably a little bit of an uncomfortable start, let's put it that way. Do you remember it was on the plane and journalists asked him, asked Pope Francis at the time, this is when President Trump was the candidate Trump, he says, what about people who are, pushing for the wall? And Pope Francis, without mentioning Donald Trump's name, said, well, people who, this is not a direct quote, but he said, people who are only building walls and are never building bridges, well, that person isn't Christian. Now, I think he said it more as an intellectual thing that as a Christian we're supposed to build bridges between people, but from the guy who is known as being one who never judges, remember, who am I to judge, it came across as very harsh. My guess is there would have been some sort of talk about that, hey, listen, I didn't mean that you're not a Christian, because Donald Trump is a Christian. He's a baptized Christian, and he says he believes in his Christian faith. So Pope Francis has every reason to believe that he is a Christian.
Yeah, they talked about coming together, and they do share the ideology that radical Islamic terrorism needs to end, and he discussed that with all of the leaders that he met with throughout the world. From a Christian perspective, from a godly perspective, what can you share with us, some message to make us feel like we can take heart? Well,
it seems like they have come to some sort of agreement. I think there's going to be a readout on this later from the White House, but some sort of agreement specifically with regards to ISIS and radical terror. We'll see what actually comes out. But 2.5 years ago, who was the one telling the world leaders, you better start doing something to ISIS that is taking over Iraq?
Francis.
Who was it? Francis. You got that, Brian? Francis. It was Pope Francis. I know you love the guy. But listen, Brian.
No, listen.
Okay?
He's a very big critic of America.
Absolutely. But Pope Francis was saying to the world, use force if necessary. That was to the ambassador of the United Nations. Why is nobody doing anything in Iraq? ISIS is destroying, killing all these Christians.
You should have called President Obama. They were great friends. And President Obama was the one that let everything become the Wild West in the Middle East.
He made it very clear what the world needed to do. And thank God, very soon after, President Obama did start doing get more active against ISIS. Unfortunately, it was too slow.
Syria was pulverized
Yes.
by that time, and we put advisors into Iraq. That's hardly the big action that Pope Francis wanted.
Okay, they also agreed that the United States should not be involved in, and I'm not saying in this meeting, but just generally that the United States should not, the West should not be involved in nation building all over the world.
Sure.
Both of them agree about that. So there's a lot of agreement.
Let's talk a little bit about
He's also
protocol.
pro-life, right?
Yes, and they did talk about that in the release today.
Let's talk a little bit about protocol, because at the beginning of the program we were talking about how some in the Italian press had said, it's distasteful that the President of the United States had a coat unbuttoned at one point
Like
when
us.
when he was in the presence of the pontiff. But when it comes to, for instance, headscarves, which both Melania and Ivanka wore, is that mandatory or is it suggested?
Yeah, it's not,
How does that work?
It's not mandatory. It's there have been plenty of people who have gone in front of the Holy Father, even in an official visit like this, without the scarf. But it just shows that that they have chosen to follow that protocol as a sign of respect. It really goes back to biblical language of when you're in the presence of God. Not that the Pope is God, but when you're in a sacred place, that St. Paul talked about women covering using a head cover. So it's
beautiful. You get a chance to wear a mandia. It's so gorgeous, and it looks beautiful on Melania and Ivanka. Now, when I was there, though, we did have to cover our arms and we had to cover our legs. And if you forget to cover when you take the tour, you can buy the covering there.
That's right.
Very handy.
Very, very, very small price.
You can get anything. There's so many gift shops around the Vatican. Am I right?
Yes,
it might
I'm
have
glad
been
you
free.
got
I
to see
can't
that,
remember, but
Brian.
I think there was a small little fee.
All right.
Thank you so much, Father.
Thank you, Father
God bless you
Jonathan.
guys. Thank you.